Welcome to another edition of the Dogger Pass Podcast. This for UFC Vegas 51. I'm Paul Shaughnessy, joined on the line by Cody Saftic, coming off the heels of UFC 273. You know, mistakes were made. Pichel whisper, no more. I got a little bit too hyped about Khamzat Chimaev. I will say that. I think we saw some of his limitations, but I see some people thinking that, like, oh, this guy's a boss. It's like, I don't know. He just took a step up to the number 2 guy in the division. Yeah. He was a little bit scared to go to the mat with him, and Gilbert Burns, I think he was just scared to go into his guard and didn't know what would happen if he got in there. I mean, he's been training with Darren Till, so it's like he probably clearly hasn't been working with somebody with that type of guard. We saw some limitations, but we saw a guy who's got absolute heart and fury. So, I mean, I saw they opened up like the Colby versus Khamzat line last night. A bunch of people jumped on to the plus 170 on Covington. If you guys want to get me some dog money on Khamzat, I'll play. So we'll see how it all shakes out on that front. But yeah, a little bit of a rough card. Luckily, the 2 plays that I had in the main event saved it from being an absolute bloodbath. But we're here to talk about UFC Vegas 51, which does not have the star power that we got used to last week by any stretch of the imagination. There's 14 fights. Do you have anything? You already have your recap show, so I'm sure you don't really have anything to add about UFC 273 there.
Well, the only thing I will add is pretty much everything went wrong. We needed our top ticket guy, Peter Yan, and he lost. My God. And we knew it was going to be a greasy decision. Didn't go our way. The 2 split decisions on the card, both of them did not go our way. The 3 women's MMA bouts where we took the slight favorites in all 3, Pat Man's theory, might as well take the dog. All 3 of them lost. And last but not least, most heartbreaking of all, you told me about Alexei Olenek, Paul. You really did. And to make matters worse, it wasn't just a I told you so kind of thing. You mentioned the scarf hold. The scarf hold neck crank. Because, I mean, where's my boot here? Because, hey, he does it every time. He does it every time. He's always got one more left in him. But I didn't believe. Paul. I thought myself, 44 years old, giving up 20 to 30 pounds, fighting a guy that is apparently got a BJJ black belt. Did I mention that?
Yeah, that's nonsense. And I said that was nonsense. I don't believe that black belt. You got that black belt at Walmart. That's, you know what? You're having he's struggling down the stretch. Man of his word.
A little bit.
Yeah. Got the greasy entrails.
Bum shit. The only thing worse than that performance by me was the performance by Jared Vandera, who really should have left his gloves in the middle of the ring. But anyways, new week, new stretch, new luck. Let's get back at her, buddy.
Yeah, we got Vicente Luque taking on Belal Muhammad in the main event of UFC Vegas 51. It's a rematch from many, many years ago. It was the Conor McGregor card, I believe, versus Eddie Alvarez at in New York City. And it's the only time Belal Muhammad has ever been knocked out. Got knocked out in the first round against Vicente Luque. Minus 165, Vicente Luque. Plus 145, Muhammad. I'm sure you can make the argument like both of these guys have significantly changed. And if we've learned anything from Peter Yan versus Aljamain Sterling, it's that just because you've seen this play out one way doesn't mean it's going to happen the exact same way again in the world of mixed martial arts. I mean, I'm still leaning towards, not even leaning. I like Vicente Luque to get the job done here. He's trained with so many wrestlers, and I know that Belal has put together a pretty good wrestling game. He's kind of a jack of all trades. He's got all of the skills. The chin has been usually pretty good, except for when he took on Luque in that one spot. He just got caught. It is what it is. But I feel like if Belal is taking him to the ground, trying to control him there, over the course of 5 rounds, you could get caught in something tricky in Vicente Luque's guard. Luque is not hard to take down, but once you get down there, he's a whole bunch of danger. And on the feet, and in terms of just somebody with a little bit more power and ability to finish fights, I'm favoring Luque too. So I think he's the rightful favorite. Luque's my pick. What about yours?
Yeah, honestly, I would have favored Luque, and I still do, but I would have favored him by a wide margin, if
Really?
not for Belal Muhammad's last fight against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. And it's not like Wonderboy knows how to wrestle, and we already know that that's the path to victory. It's that he was absolutely all over him. He mauled him.
He did.
It really gave you a sense that if he fights those kind of game plans, it looked like he could fight for 5 rounds, no problem. And there's another thing with Vicente Luque, like he goes hard. Everything he throws with a lot of power into it. He's got some dynamic technique. He throws in combinations. A lot of it's explosive action. We've seen him fight in 3-round fights where it's tooth and nail going into that 3rd round. What if it was to go an extra couple rounds? Now, I think he's in world-class shape. He's got world-class training partners. He's got world-class almost everything. His grappling's good. His striking's good. His takedown defense maybe could use a little bit of work. But it's going to have to be a rinse and repeat Belal Muhammad 10 takedowns kind of night. And I don't know if he's going to get the 10 takedowns. If it stays at range, much quicker hand speed, much quicker striking from Vicente Luque. And I don't think it'll be like last time. He'll just catch him and knock him out. But again, when you look up Belal Muhammad, his record's a little bit deceiving in that since that last fight. So Randy Brown, that's a good win, but it's 5 years ago, right? But Jordan Mean released. Tim Mean's not what he used to be. Chen Rancounter no longer with the promotion. Jeff Neal, at least there is a guy with a little bit of power, but didn't really pan out to everybody's expectations. Curtis Melander, Takashi Sato, Lyman Good, Diago Lima, no longer with the promotion. Leon Edwards wins the 1st round. Then it's an unfortunate eye poke in the 2nd round, but he looked much faster. He looked much more fluid, and he was just going to, in my opinion, I don't know, it was a 2nd round, no contest, but it seemed like Leon Edwards was just going to cruise on him. They never even book a rematch. They're just like, yeah, we've seen enough of this one. I think when he fights a fluid striker, more than likely, that's what's going to happen. Old Damian Maia, not that credible of a victory. And that's what caused me to think in the Wonderboy fight, you know what? He doesn't really fight a whole lot of good strikers. Wonderboy is a good striker, if not a great striker. It's Wonderboy's inability to stuff the takedowns and get his back off the cage. And Vicente Luque doesn't really have those same problems. So, yeah, honestly, I got to go with Vicente at the end of the day. The line's not terrible, -175, I believe, in favor of Luque. I would agree with that for the most part, and I will be picking him. But there is some danger here in Belal, especially if he can extend it out into those later rounds.
We got Gadzhi, Omargadzhiev. I kind of feel like that's phonetically how you should pronounce it. He's taking on Caio Borralho. 2 contender series guys. I have no idea why these guys are the co-main event. Maybe they're going to jump up the order, but then you look up and down this card and you go, you can kind of just interchange everything. I'm kind of surprised. I guess Devin Clark versus William Knight would have been, because of the amount of experience these guys have in the UFC, probably a better co-main event, but we're not here to talk about belt placement. We're here to talk about these guys in action. Gadzhi is kind of your stereotypical, Dagestani Russian grappler. Stand-up seems to be a little bit of a work in progress. He's not completely a fish out of water there. When he takes you down, he wraps up the legs, and he tries to smash you, tries to take you, grind you out basically. Borralho, he was on the Contender Series twice. First time out there. Had a real tooth and nail fight with Aaron Jeffrey. There was a lot of standing cage work. Both guys seemed a little bit fatigued, particular as we got into late in the 2nd round, into the 3rd round. Comes back, gets a 1st round finish over Jesse Murray in a follow-up, a month later, Contender Series fight where, the fight barely even got started. If this fight stays on the feet, I doubt it will. Borralho probably hits harder. He has a longer reach. He's definitely seems to be more of a... He's got a thicker frame for sure. Omargadzhiev is taller than him. I think Gadzhi, you know me with Russians. It's hard for me to get off of the Russian train. I think Gadzhi is able to take him down, neutralize him, not necessarily get a finish, but do that enough to secure a victory. Probably by decision here. So it's Gadzhi for me. What about you?
Honestly, I'm not real confident on this one either way, but I would take the slight dog shot, I think, in Caio Borralho. I think the guy's actually a really smart fighter. His selection on strikes, his grappling, he seems like he's a thinking's man fighter. And then you see he comes out with this whole fight nerd mantra where He considers himself an analytical kind of guy, right? He's got a neck tat, which I don't understand how you could be a nerd with a neck tat, because I've never seen it, but all the same, he's fighting Canada's own Aaron Jeffrey, right? Middleweight tilt. And he had Jeffrey. I know what you're saying. It was a close fight because it wasn't like Jeffrey was out it by a stretch, but I thought he did an excellent job of controlling the entire fight. He got the takedowns over Jeffrey when he wanted them. He was outstriking Jeffrey at distance when he wanted them. He had the pressure when he should have put in pressure on. He wins a fairly clean decision, in my opinion. Should have got awarded a contract, doesn't get awarded a contract. So I honestly believed it was a contract worthy of performance, good enough, and I was excited to see him in the UFC. Dane doesn't agree, but they gave him a short turnaround. I'll bet 205 pounds that Jesse Murray fight was. So he just stays in Las Vegas, slaps on 20 pounds, shows up and punches the guy out in the first round, and then gets his contract. Lots that you can like about this guy. Now, I don't know if he's dealing with injury or if he's dealing with some visa issues, but he had a layup against Dustin Stolfutz canceled, and he had a layup against Jamie Pickett canceled. Now, because he's pulling out of fights, the UFC's like, okay, you had your chance to fight the Dustin Stolfutzes of the world. Now you got to take Gadzhi or Omargadzhiev. So I know it's going to be a tough fight. It's going to be a much tougher fight. But again, with Borralho, he's a BJJ black belt. He's a judo black belt. His striking seemed decent enough. I think with Omargadzhiev, he's one of these strong physical type Russians. But if he goes out there and he gets the takedown, I'm hoping Borralho is able to just hang on, survive, neutralize positions, maybe work his way back up. And then the longer this thing goes, hopefully Omargadzhiev starts to run on fumes, is able to take over, maybe outstrike him a little bit. Listen, I got the fight closer lined to a pick'em, maybe a dog or pass type situation. And because of that, I'll go ever so slight with Borralho.
All right, moving on down, we've got Miguel Baeza taking on Andre Fialho. Baeza is a minus 180 favorite. Fialho can be had for plus 155. Fialho's a bit of a banger. Technique isn't great, but he hits hard. And that seems to be probably the greatest path to victory that you can have over Miguel Baeza, who's still young, who's still developing in the game, but I feel like that chin is definitely a big liability. I don't have a strong lean on this one yet. I was wanting to hear what you had to say first.
Yeah, so this is another fight where before I saw Fialho's last one, I probably would have written him off and said Baeza. Like, I've just never been that high up on Fialho for a long time. He was training out of American Kickboxing Academy. He was touted as being this, next up-and-coming undefeated prospect. And I remember he fought Chidi Njokuani on Bellator and gets knocked down in like 18 seconds. Bad performance. Knocks out, it's 21 seconds I can see here, right? Anyways, then he takes on my boy Chris, the Action Man Curtis. Wow, Chris is going to put it on him. He does. He just neutralizes him, controls all of the striking exchanges, slowly picks away at him, tires him out, TKOs him in the third round. Nice fight for Chris Curtis. Again, just not high on Fialho. Then he takes on this Antonio Carlos Jr. for LFA. Well, shame on me because I bet Fialho in this one. Minus 250 favorite over Antonio Carlos Jr., who hadn't fought in 3 years and was an 0-2 UFC washout. Like, it just... Fialho can surely win this one. Completely gasses out. Terrible performance. The guy's a bust. Now, he does have a little bit of power, as you mentioned, and he uses that power to good effect. Knocks out James Vick. Knocks out this Sang Hu Yu. Knocks out Lincoln Puig. And then Stefan Sekulic, another UFC veteran, able to go out there and knock him out. He does have decent hands. He's able to put some decent work together. I'm just not confident in his ability to fight that 3 rounds. And when he takes some damage, to come back and work his way back into it. So I load up on some Michel Pereira. Like, I know this guy. And I know Michel Pereira is going to put a beating on him. But not so, man. Again, his striking is good. It is clean. He's no longer at AKA. He's at Sanford now. And I think you see how many world-class guys are coming out of that gym right now. The guy's in good shape, man. He's only 28 years old. He's had a couple early setbacks, but Chidi Njokuani's banging it out in the UFC right now and doing good. And Chris the Action Man Curtis, of course, banging it out in the UFC right now and doing quite well. So you can't even hold those losses against him. And everything else has been quite well. One thing he did good in the Michel Pereira fight was as he started to tire and as it looked like Pereira might put the heat on him a little bit and break him, he did an excellent job of fighting his way back in, countering. Even the third round, he was so gassed going into the third. He's sitting on a stool cooked. And Henry basically gives him an old slap and tells him, like, you want this? This is what we're here for. This is what we're here for. You knew this was going to happen. These are the things you got to go through. And he just comes out ready to bang for the third round again, like pushes through it. So he's done an excellent job of actually turning around my opinion of him. Miguel Baeza, meanwhile, coming off the Contender Series, it looked like, this guy's going to be flashy. This guy's going to have a lot of skill. But, maybe it's that he leaves his head a little bit up in the air. Maybe it's that his striking's not good enough to just get a quick finish. His grappling's not good enough to just get a quick finish. So he needs to fight these guys for prolonged periods of time. And the longer they go, he becomes a liability. Of course, he got caught by Matt Brown once upon a time, but he's able to survive that one. and put an aged Matt Brown away. But taking on the guys like Santiago Ponzinibbio, Chaos Williams, they're tough, they're durable, and they pack a lot of heat. And the longer these fights go, eventually he gets clipped. I remember the Ponzinibbio fights. Like, he starts well, he's getting his low kick game going, and just the longer this thing grinds out, Ponzinibbio just takes over from him. Now his output completely falls off. He gets beat up. The Chaos Williams fight, he's kind of looking like a deer in the headlights. He doesn't really want to engage this guy. I don't blame him. You know, the Ox fighter, Chaos Williams, don't really want to engage the guy, but he allows it to slip away from him. Again, gets it's mostly a whole lot of leg kicks here. And then he gets clipped in the third round, a fight that he could have maybe won if he shored up a couple spots, but prolonged striking battles are not going in his favor. And when you think about Fialho, 28, still assumingly getting better, looked decent enough in his last fight, he probably does clip him at some point, right? So I would lean towards Fialho, but it's not like there's a ton of confidence, especially if we expect this thing to be like a striking battle that gets extended into the second, maybe early into the third round, right?
Yeah, so dog or pass?
Dog or pass, and I'm thinking fight doesn't go the distance, which I don't currently have in front of me. I can see the under 1.5. Yeah. They got it set as a 1.5. Chances are they're going to go out there, bang in the middle of the ring, plus 155 for Fialho. That's a generous price tag. That's where I'd be going.
All righty. I'm just looking up quickly for if fight doesn't go to decision. Isn't at DraftKings Sportsbook yet. Doesn't go. It's moving towards like minus 185 out there.
Yeah, that's
it's starting to head in that direction. It's not terrible. Maybe it could be a little parlay piece if you really think the chin gets cracked for Baeza, and Baeza's a finisher in his own right too. So I don't mind where your head's at on that one. All right, moving on down, we got Mayra, Bueno, Silva taking on Wu Yanan. Minus 450 for Bueno Silva, plus 340 for Wu Yanan. Interestingly enough, well, one, Mayra Bueno Silva went full Bobby Green when she took on Manon Fiorot. Like, getting hit, saying, nah, that didn't hurt me. Finger wagging, doing all of that stuff, which just leads the judges cage side to believe, well, we know that strike landed, and maybe it kind of bothered her. Like, doesn't help her cause whatsoever. It's probably something that you do when you just get kind of too excited in the cage. I wouldn't know, obviously. Never been in a legalized cage fight. But yeah, I mean, there's problems with her, especially with this price tag. It really comes down to price. I don't think Wu Yanan is anything special, but minus 450 for someone who has very, very low volume in pretty much all of her fights. She should have a grappling advantage, or she should have a submission grappling advantage. However, she's never landed a takedown in her career. She has 2 submission wins in the UFC, but that's because she's been taken down and been able to get it. Wu Yanan throws a little bit more volume. The much more punch, like the better strikes should be landed by Bueno Silva. I think Bueno Silva wins, but I cannot get to this minus 450 with, you know, the amount of volume that I was just talking about. The volume, like, she's kind of like a 50 to 60 significant strike landed per fight type of fighter. Yeah, minus 450 is just, that's scaring me straight off of this fight. Do you have any hot take on this one? Because it just looks like a straight up pass. I don't want to even bet the dog. I won't even say dog or pass because it's just a straight up pass.
Yeah, no, I think Silva should win, right? I can make excuses for her in her losses and her wins, you know, not terrible, but at the price tag, women's MMA, that's a no bueno, Paul.
That is a no bueno, Silva.
Yeah. Again, if I'm going to make excuses for her, here's a couple of them. So she armbars Jillian Robertson after getting taken down. And Jillian Robertson's a black belt, well-trained, who's actually a decent enough grappler. Mm-hmm. So it's not like she just armbarred a Putz. It's a good armbar win, right? Then the Marina Moroz fight. Well, Marina Moroz is good. I think we can all agree with that. She's like a fringe top 7, top 10 contender in the division. Throws a ton of volume. She actually fought a good game plan against her too. You know, marched forward, was aggressive, got outstruck 139 to 88, gave up 2 takedowns, but worked her way back up. Well, she got taken down late in the rounds, but anyways, 88 significant strikes landed. Did a good job of coming forward, biting down on her mouthpiece. Again, maybe there's something there. She saw armbars Mayra Romero Barella, which is not impressive. She's also a BJJ black belt. It's not that credible of a victory. So Don't have to talk about that one. And then against Minot Fiorot is just very elusive. She fights a very Holly Holm-esque game plan, a Kaylin Chukagian-esque game plan where she's in and out, very lateral, very quick on her feet. She throws a lot of side kicks. She throws a lot of distant finding, striking techniques that just keep her opponent at bay. So for a flat-footed, plodding fighter, like a shoot-to-box style fighter, like Bueno, Silva, it's not exactly a great matchup for her, but she still does a fairly good job of moving forward, lands 48 significant strikes. I know it looks like low volume, but 48 against Fiorot is 80, 90 against the average fighter who's not going to move that much.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Wu's only 25 years old. Conceivably, she could and should be getting better, but she's just thrown so many issues so far in her career. I mean, she got outgrinded heavily by Gina Mazzani. That's a bad loss, right? The Laura Mueller fight, snatching it up armbar on Mueller, it's not really the same level of a Jillian Robertson. It's really not the same level of a Romero Borrella, who's actually out of American Top Team as well. So it's just a little bit of a higher quality. Again, she threw up good volume in the Mizuki Inoue fight, and that led me to believe that maybe she would have a chance against Jocelyn Edwards, but she was just out-muscled and beat up in that fight. Like, she had almost nothing going for her. At range, striking looked like, okay, work in progress. Maybe this is going to be your avenue. But, I mean, the output was there from Jocelyn Edwards. The power was there from Jocelyn Edwards. Whenever she did try to get up the initiated clinch and get her up against the cage, she didn't really have much success. Does complete one takedown, but is unable to do anything with it, and then just proceeds to get beat up. So against Bueno Silva, I think it's going to be much of the same. To stay standing, she's just going to march her backwards and land the big, meaningful shots. Taking her down is going to be a problem. And even if you did manage to take her down, she's too physical for you. She might be able to just throw up an armbar, be the better grappler, get the win. But at minus 450, that's a no bueno, Paul. That's a no bueno. So, yeah. I mean, the pick will be Silva, but
she'll end up on your parlays.
I don't know that it will.
But it'll be lower down than a minus 450 typically is. I would guess.
The thing with when you make a parlay, is if you've already got 5 people on it and you add a minus 450, it actually does juice it up. It's where do you put the minus 450? So that kind of price tag would suggest a top ticket, right? But you don't want to top ticket Maria Silva. It's kind of similar to the problem I had last week. So you know this because I talked to you on the preview show. I told you I don't want Peter Yan on my top ticket. I think it's going to be a greasy decision. I think Aljo could fight one of these smart game plans and just wins the fight based on the point system, which is essentially what he did. I thought it was going to be more striking oriented. It ended up being the back take that he used, but kudos to him. He played the point system in order to win the fight. So sometimes that's the important part, is not necessarily going and delivering some great fight, is being able to go out there and secure the victory, right? But now you struggle because Volkanovski is an 8-1 favorite and Chimaev is a minus 650 favorite. So you need to add somebody. And there was just nobody really else on the card that I liked. Ian Gary, I just didn't want to trust him that much. And nothing else went right for me. So it really wouldn't have mattered anyways, for the most part. Mike Malott should have been there, but I had questions, I guess. Anyways, it's a coulda, shoulda, woulda thing. In this case, Silva should win. Yeah, could win, should win. But don't want her on my top ticket for obvious reasons.
All right, we got Pat Sabatini taking on TJ the Truth Laramie. Minus 435 Sabatini, plus 330 Laramie. Who you got here, buddy?
Yeah, this one's difficult for me because on one hand, I think Pat Sabatini should have his way. The line is off. Like, I don't think it should be this wide out. But on the other hand, TJ Laramie is one of these kids that is a really solid, talented kid that, given the time off, could come in here and could pose some problems. Mainly if Pat Sabatini can't get the fight to the ground and striking, I don't think is going to be, I don't know, it's tough. On one hand, I think if the fight stays standing, Laramie would have the advantage. On the other hand, Pat Sabatini seems to maybe have a little bit more durability, a little more grit. He's a little bit older, he's a little bit stronger, he's a little bit bigger. And I think all these things are going to ultimately be the determining factor. So for people who don't know TJ Laramie, he was going to be Canada's next phenom. I know we actually talked about Mike Malott being Canada's next phenom last week. The difference is Mike Malott was in his 20s, right? Whereas this kid was like 14 years old and he was competing at grappling tournaments, smashing people. His little brother Tony, who fights for LFA, will be in the UFC eventually. Very, very talented, right? They're just like, their dad had them in training at a young age. That's all they did. They trained very hard. They trained at a high level. They trained with tons of UFC veterans, and they've both gotten way better. His own career shows, 3 wins to start out. That Vince Murdoch split decision, total bullshit, right? Total bullshit. Should have won. It's in Michigan. Vince Murdoch's from Michigan, right? Even the hometown Michigan fans booed it. TJ Laramie's like 18, 19 years old, fighting a dude that would eventually make it onto the Ultimate Fighter and whatnot, and the Contender Series. So he was fighting good guys right from the get-go, but he found his limitations, right? This Alex Morgan, who's a welterweight out here, lightweight welterweight, right? He was able to knock him out both of their meetings, right? He had some setbacks. He eventually makes the UFC. He looks good. And then the Derek Minner fight, this is the one that caught me, is that you know what Minner's going to do. He's going to try to grab a hold of that neck. You know you're going to have to mind your P's and Q's, but Laramie's still so young. You got to make mistakes to realize where you went wrong. And he presses for the takedown against Minner, who basically just bides his time up against the cage and pulls guard on the guillotine and submits him. That's not the problem, right? Young kid making mistake, not the problem. The problem is that when you see him in the post-fight, because you're standing there waiting for the referee to raise somebody's hand, when you're standing there in the post-fight, then you realize, oh my God, this guy's not a featherweight. He's 5'5". That makes him the shortest featherweight in the division. He did start it early on in his career at 135, had trouble making the weight, competes at 145, and he's just not built. He could get away with it on the regional scene, in my opinion. In the UFC, these guys are just way too big. Derek Minner is, by nobody's consensus, a big 45er. He's not. Watch both of them when they're standing in the middle of the ring, getting a hand to be raised. He's twice the size of TJ Laramie, who has almost no physical muscle definition. Now, Laramie has done a fairly good job of now taking off a year and a half. I know he's been doing strength and conditioning. I know he's been grinding hard. He's working with world-class guys, as he always does. But I think that his long-term problem is and always going to be that he's too small to fight at 145 pounds. And against a guy like Pat Sabatini, who is just an absolute wrecking machine of a grappler, like, he's probably going to physically muscle you to the ground, and then you're going to be in a world of shit. So at that point, that's where I would have some problems. But Laramie on paper might have a bit of a striking edge, and he might on paper have a bit of a wrestling edge. And if he could use both of those things to keep the fight standing, sprawl and brawl him, show that the year and a half has both aided his game and his maturity as a fighter, he could put the proper game plan together. He could pull off an upset. And he's the kind of price tag that's almost worth, like, do I want to have a shot? But I think size does matter. Against Pat Sabatini, who's going to be narrowly minded, thinking grappling. That's the winning game plan. That's probably where this fight takes place, is these grappling exchanges. And then I think Pat Sabatini should get the victory. So I don't agree with the price tag, but not enough for me to pull the trigger on the Canadian.
Yeah, I tried to beat some of the line movement early. I took Pat Sabatini. He was minus 350 at the time as a part of a 4-leg parlay. I kind of saw a lot of the same things. I just think, even though it's Short King Spring, I do think that Pat Sabatini does have some physical advantages. He's never been subbed. As long as he's just consistently going to the takedown. Like, if this fight stays standing, we're in big trouble.
Yes, we could be.
Because the volume just really isn't there for Pat Sabatini whatsoever. He needs to be getting takedowns. He needs to be getting into guard, holding position, doing enough just not to get stood up, and rinse and repeat. And that's kind of what I am expecting from watching, like, the Tucker Lutz fight. Like, that's kind of the game plan I think we go back to here. So before some of these, I knew some of these lines were going to get kind of crazy. And then I start dipping into so many props and stuff, and those props don't come through. So Pat Sabatini is on the 4-leg parlay. It's like 2-1. As we go down the card, I'll tell you the other pieces. And obviously at the end of the show, I will tell you the all 4 of them in one. But moving on down, we've got Devin Clark taking on William Knight at heavyweight, because William Knight pulled an absolute stunt last time out. He was supposed to fight Max Grishin, who's like way taller than him, you know. I mean, William Knight is...
He did fight Max Grishin. He just came in so heavy.
Thick with like 4 or 5 C's. Like, this guy's a boss. Like, he's short for the division, but like, he's so thick that it's like, there is no move to middleweight, I don't think, for him. And that's totally fine. But he came in, he took it on short notice, in fairness, but he came in at 218 pounds. And everyone, like, it was kind of like the most eye-opening. It's like, you came in 12 pounds heavier than the allotted amount, and you're 5'10" light heavyweight taking on like a 6'5" Russian. It was insane. And then it was a pretty mediocre performance. You see the limitations with him. It's like, if someone can maintain distance, pick him apart with strikes. Like, he's got power, he's got pop. He's able to muscle around some people. And this could be a situation where that works in his favor. Because if you remember when Dana White found Devin Clark on Dana White Looking for a Fight, the first thing he said to them said to him was, "You look like a middleweight. I don't think you're a light heavyweight." Now he's fighting at heavyweight against William Knight. It'd be interesting to see the weigh-ins first and foremost on this, because I struggle to see Devin Clark being much bigger than 220, 225 when he comes in, and who knows what Thick Willie's going to come in at. But I like Clark, I think, in this spot, as long as he doesn't get clipped. The chin has always been a bit of a liability. Maybe cutting less weight will help that situation for him. But, yeah, it's kind of like knockout or bust for William Knight as far as I see it. The pace, cardio, and, yeah, being able to push that pace, get some takedowns, ride top control. I think that all is in Devin Clark's favor. So am I rushing to the book to lay minus 170? Not until I see what happens at the weigh-ins between this. Like if there's a 20-pound weight advantage for William Knight, I'd probably be a little bit scared to do so. But yeah, I'll pick Clark. But weigh-ins I think are really important. Even though they're heavyweights, usually heavyweights weigh-ins aren't very important. But I want to see how these guys really match up on Friday afternoon. What's your take here?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's two guys. This is the argument for why there should be like a UFC cruiserweight division. Is both guys, I guess, are a little bit too big for 205, and at the same time, they're just too small for heavyweight. Like in comparison, I thought huge missed opportunity to do Chris Barnett versus Thick Willie, because who doesn't want to see that?
It'd be a good time.
Here's the problem: is that Chris Barnett cuts down to 265 pounds, so. Yeah, he's only 5'9", and it makes sense to make a 5'9", 5'10" guy fight. He's got like a 40-pound weight advantage, so it's not really a sensible fight to put together. I get it. And with Devin Clark, yeah, you're gonna have to see him at weigh-ins, because you mentioned it yourself. Dana White tells the guy at the UFC looking for a fight, he's just like, dude, you're a middleweight. You need to drop down. You could fight in the UFC, and he agrees. And he debuts in the UFC against Alex Nicholson at 185 pounds. That was his debut, but he got knocked out in the first round. And then he says, you know what, bad weight cut. You know, I should be fighting at 205. But you see the size of this guy's legs, man. It's like, Jesus. Like, I bet you he could fight at heavyweight, but it's going to be in that 220 range. And the thing I think he'll have success with here is that he doesn't have a great chin, but William Knight doesn't really throw a ton of shots. Like, he'll throw some decent power here and there, but for the most part, he's a little bit lackadaisical. But Devin Clark doesn't mind just grinding guys up against the cage, and that would be the path to victory, just grind William Knight up against the cage. He's shown the Grisham fight. You know, he had a 10, 15-pound weight advantage over Grisham in that fight, and yet he easily got controlled. He was a smaller man. He didn't really have much to show him. I don't know that his top game is really all that good if he was able to muscle the fight to the ground. And I don't think Devin Clark's going to get taken down from him. He's got the wrestling edge. So he just needs to press him up against the cage, bide his time. He's really good at landing short little knees in the clinch as well, short little strikes just to show that he's active and he is busy. But it's just going to be chipping away and just grinding away at him. And for that reason, I would think Devin Clark does enough to just take him down the stretch and end up winning a decision. But again, this is a card that there's a lot of these greasy spots where I'm not super confident either way. And at the same time, Clark has had chin issues in the past, and fighting at heavyweight against a big guy like William Knight, not necessarily big in stature, but big in just muscle mass. Like if he clips you, you're going to be in a lot of problem. And you could kind of get a sense that he could knock out Devin Clark. But I think more often than not, it's Clark just pinning him up against the cage and landing short shots. So that's the path that I'll go with here. I'll take Devin Clark by decision.
Pannie Kianzad takes on Lina Lansberg, minus 425 Kianzad, plus 320 Lansberg. One of the other legs that it was minus 300 at the time, so it's been moving super hard. So it was Pat Sabatini, Pannie Kianzad. Stand by for further confirmation on the other two legs of that parlay. These two already fought. It was Pannie Kianzad's third professional fight way back in 2012. This one really just comes down to, I think you have fighters kind of heading in two different directions right now. Pannie Kianzad has been making improvements. We've seen in the cage, like going tooth and nail with Raquel Pennington. Very, very close fight. Pennington looked pretty damn good this past weekend against Aspen Ladd. So, you know, that's a decent, even though it's a loss, it's against a good opponent. Obviously, Lansberg can potentially land some takedowns in this spot, but without being too rude, and I'm going to sound pretty rude, and I'm going to probably take a little thing out of your book on this one. Lina Lansberg hasn't fought in 2 years. She's 40 years old.
You're an ageist, Paul.
I know, big time ageist. She just seems pretty washed to me as far as I'm concerned. If she's not able to absolutely dominate the grappling, and we've seen Pannie Kianzad against like Raquel, be able to hold her own for the most part, not get held down, not get pinned down, not get controlled all that much. I just don't think there's really much left in the tank for Lina Lansberg. Is it possible? Yeah, that like she could hold her up against the cage. Maybe there's a strength disparity that I don't really necessarily see. I suppose, but if this fight stays on the feet, Kianzad's gonna dominate in terms of the number of strikes thrown. And yeah, it's like kind of cage control or takedown control or bust for Lina Lansberg. And at 40, I'm an ageist, as you just called me. I just don't see it. I think this is the end of the line for Lina Lansberg, the elbow queen. Haven't seen too many elbows from her recently. So yeah, Kianzad for me, it was minus 300, 425. We're starting to cut off all my perceived value, I think, from the line, though. So get in while the getting's good, I suppose. I don't even know. Is the getting still good on this number at minus 425? Pat would say no, because it's women's MMA, and that's a Pat Mayo move.
Yeah, the move was to try to get on this one early if you could. But again, soft openers and a lot of books will limit your action while they really see what the public wants. And the public wants Pannie Kianzad. And yeah, that's a move. It's actually a passing of the torch spot because you got you got two Swedish Muay Thai stylists taking on each other. The difference is Lina Lansberg's 10 years older, 40 years old. She was Pannie Kianzad 10 years ago. Breaks into the UFC and it's like, well, she's got this European Muay Thai style. She can put pressure on people. They call her the elbow queen. She can put some damage, but her grappling just never really got to the level. She's good in the clinch, but her cardio is not great. She's got some physicality to her, but again, it's like a Muay Thai clinch game, right? Once you get throwing in trips, once you get going takedowns, once you get muscling her up against the cage, she's limited. But beyond that, it's her output. Her output's a problem. Now, Pannie Kianzad's had like an up and down career. Back in the day, top prospect, top Swedish prospect. Then she hits the LFA scene and it's like bust. Then she gets down to the Ultimate Fighter. She makes it to the UFC and she's looking good. And I think there's some things that you can like to her game. But again, this one comes down to volume. So if you want to look at it from a volume standpoint, in 4 of her last fights, she's put up huge numbers. She landed 98 against Jessie Jess Rose Clark, who's a better wrestler than Lina Lansberg. She landed 103 against Betch Correia. She landed 92 against Sanjara Eubanks, who's certainly a better wrestler than Lina Lansberg. And that one was the eye-opener to me because I bet Pannie Kianzad in that spot thinking better striking, more output. But you knew she was going to get in bad spots. You knew she was going to get taken down. And against a good grappler like Eubanks, how do you come through with that? And so she gave up 2 takedowns, but she was able to get back up. She put the volume on her. She fought a hard 3 rounds. At this point, she's looking good. She beats Alexis Davis, throwing up a career-best 124 significant strikes. So again, just rolling here. And then you run into Raquel Pennington. So she actually did outstrike her 50-48. The thing is, and as you alluded to from Raquel Pennington's performance this weekend as well, is she's rugged and she's good in the clinch and she's good at pressing you up again and just kind of neutralizing how much damage you can effectively get off. So landing 50 against an opponent like that is much different than landing against somebody in the open field. And Lina Lansberg is probably going to be more often than not in the open field. She didn't look good her last couple performances. She hasn't fought in a couple years. She is 40 years old. And again, she's just going to be slower with less output. Technique, I can't say it's any more better than Pannie Kianzad. I think Kianzad's going to be in this one throughout and not enough of a grappling edge to say that she's going to rely on that to beat Pannie. So, yeah, adding her as part of a parlay when you could get on it makes a lot of sense. Great move. The worry is, like Pat Mayo would say, it's women's MMA, man. And this isn't like a slight favorite. This is like a big enough favorite that who knows. If we think it's going to be 15 minutes and we think it's going to be a striking battle, then could it not in theory be a 15-minute greasy striking battle that could go either way? We see it all the time. Hopefully, just not this time. And Pannie makes it fairly clear and gets the decision victory.
Well, here's the thing. Now I can kind of reveal the whole thing. I wanted to get some AJ McKee belly action because I think he's really the future. I know Patricio Freite is, one of the greatest featherweights in Bellator history at the very least. He's up there. He's obviously a stud, but I think AJ McKee is absolutely the future. I was like, I'm sick of all of these chalk numbers getting away from me. So yeah, I added Pat Sabatini, Pannie Kianzad, Drakkar Klose, and then AJ McKee. It pays just a touch over 2-1. Here's the real thing with Drakkar Klose versus Brendan Jenkins. Minus 550 was minus 400 on that thing. So I kind of predicted the line movements hard on these 3 UFC fights. Drakkar Klose, low volume, hasn't ever been the greatest. Obviously, he's coming off of a knockout loss against Beneil Dariush, but like that was a big step up in competition versus a legitimate top 5 guy in the division. Brendan Jenkins made Rujang look like the second coming of Khabib Nurmagomedov in that fight. Like, he is absolutely like knockout or bust here. He has some flashy techniques. Maybe he can connect with the chin. Obviously, Drakkar Klose before last fight, we would have said, hey, his chin looks pretty good. He's been in there with some quality guys, taking some quality shots, so on and so forth. The volume is always a little bit of a problem, but I mean, it was a very, very woeful performance against Zhu Rong that I just rewatched it and I was just like, I have to fade this guy before this line gets out of hand. So Drakkar Klose is on that parlay with AJ McKee, Pat Sabatini, and Pannie Kianzad. Pays 2-1 or paid 2-1 for me. It's probably less now, and those lines keep moving. But I won't be picking Brendan Jenkins. Are you? I doubt it.
No, not at all. I mean, I think this was another good spot where I think the line opened Drakkar Klose like minus 250 and now sits Drakkar Klose like minus 550. So yeah, good on you to just pull the trigger early because you knew the line was going to head in that way. And one guy you got Drakkar Klose, he's been off a couple years, not 40 like Lina Lansberg, but he does maybe have a little bit of ring rust. But at his best, he was not a contender, but a fringe contender. He was fighting other big name guys. He shows fights with Mark Diakese, whom he beat, Lando Venata, Bobby Green, Christos Giagos, all good enough victories. His losses to David Tamor, whatever happened to David Tamor, by the way, he lost to Charles Oliveira 3 years ago. That snapped like a huge winning streak for him, and you never saw him ever again. Crazy. But David Tamor and Beneil Dariush. Now, you mentioned Dariush fight, first time he's ever knocked out in his career, first time he's finished in his career. He had 7 straight fights go to decision. Mm-hmm. And then this Beneil Dariush fight, he's caught for the first time he's knocked out. He's inches away from knocking Beneil Dariush out. What a fight that was, dude. They both do the stanky leg. Like, oh my God. But MMA can be an inch. And you know what? It's a game of inches. And unfortunately, he's on the receiving end of it. But he's fighting good guys, and he's having decent enough results. Volume a little bit low, like you said, and is more of a decision guy. Doesn't have that big X factor of power. Doesn't have that big X factor of relentless grappling or a big submission game. But something that's well-rounded, durable, and can go through the pace. The thing with Brendan Jenkins, and it's right in his nickname, right? He's the human highlight reel, right? The human highlight reel. And you look at his fights, that's how he wins, Paul. He throws up a big flying knee, throws up spinning back fist. That's kind of how he goes out. He shows us Jordan Hinman spinning back elbow, right? The Jacob Kilburn fight on PFL. He got a fast start, but it looked like he was on his way to losing that one. He hits a flying switch knee, knocks him out, and then against Zhu Rong, it's on short notice. So what does he do? He just starts throwing a bunch of whack techniques. The thing is now you're moving up the ladder. Now you're fighting better guys, and they've got you scouted out. And he was mad scouted out. Zhu Rong's only like 19 years old. He's like 20 years old. Like, he's still green. You could catch a guy like that, but he saw everything coming. And I think by the numbers, Zhu Rong took him down 5 times, but incorrect. He took him down 3 times, and Brendan Jenkins fell to the floor throwing like spinning back fists the other 2 times. He got a kick caught, and he just fell to the ground. Now, you want to give him a pass because it was short notice, so maybe he thought the only way I can beat this guy is by landing something crazy, and that's what he fought with. He's training out of Las Vegas, has some decent training partners. But at the end of the day, if you can't even beat Zhu Rong, who's like 21 years old, then how are you going to fight some of these more established guys? And Drakkar Klose is that. He's got a wrestling advantage. He's got a striking advantage. He's got experience advantage. He's got an advantage in pretty much every department. The only red flag is he's been off for 2 years, and he got knocked out for the first time in his last fight. So if chin's compromised or he's not the same guy he used to be, maybe he gets caught by some crazy technique. but probability suggests that's not going to be the most likely occurrence. And we're trying to bet on the most likely occurrence, which is Drakkar Klose. So I think he did a good job of beating the line on that one. And most people jumped on this one, which is why you're seeing a 300-point line movement in a matter of like 3-4 days.
Not even just that. It's moved to minus 800 at some like trendsetters in the industry. So that minus 550 is probably not going to stick around either, which is starting to get into banana peel territory against a guy like Brandon Jenkins, the human highlight reel, who throws just crazy stuff. Maybe he connects. But yeah, once you start getting up to 10-1, it's just like, well, does he maybe catch him 1 out of 10 times? Maybe.
The NBA playoffs mean next-level basketball. Get ready for all the action by betting the play-in tournament with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. New customers can bet $5 on any team to win and get $150 in free bets instantly. You clinch a win no matter what. All DraftKings Sportsbook customers can also bet on NBA hoops with same-game parlays. Combine multiple bets from the same game for a bigger payout. The more legs you add, the more money you can win. Plus, for each day of the play-in, get a risk-free bet up to $10 if your same-game parlay does not hit. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code DOP. Bet $5 on any NBA team to win their game during the play-in tournament and get $150 in free bets instantly. That's promo code DOP at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details.
Rafa Garcia taking on Jesse Ronson. Minus 120 Garcia, plus 100 Ronson. I almost forgot that Jesse Ronson was in the UFC. I know that after his UFC debut, a great, first round finish, knocked Nicholas Dalby down. And then
wasn't his debut second run with the company, but yeah, go on.
That's what I meant. His return because he hadn't been there since like 2014, right?
Yeah.
His second debut, and then obviously that was he got busted for steroids, and now he maintains that everyone you get caught with steroids in this game, everyone always says that they aren't on the gear. But anyway, it was a really pretty good performance. He showed a lot of skills in all aspects of the game. It's an interesting spot, obviously, coming back. I feel like Rafa Garcia, if he's able to stick to the wrestling here and able to stay out of trouble in the submission grappling, he should be able to ride this one out. Like if he against Chris Grutzmacher, he had five takedowns. Natan Levy, 7 takedowns. To my knowledge, I don't believe Rafa Garcia has ever been submitted. He has not. So that's kind of where I'm leaning on this one. Obviously, he's a Jesse Ronson, Canadian MMA hero. Hero may be the wrong word. Legend. Especially in Ontario, where you're from, so you know way more about him than I do.
You're from Ontario too, Paul. Are you
yeah, but I'm out on the east.
Are you kidding me right now? You're from. Pat, what did you do to this guy? He's been there for like 6 months. He's brainwashed. He's an East Coaster. You got an Alexander Keith Seltzer behind you there?
No, but like Cody, I mean it in this respect. One, you know more about the Canadian regional MMA scene, considering you're a matchmaker for multiple promotions over the years. You matchmake for maybe not necessarily Jesse Ronson, but a lot of his like teammates and stuff end up being in contact with. You're way more into the game. I just read the odds off of the sheet. People show up for you, kids. So, yeah, let me just call up my Ontario MMA expert, Cody Saftic. Where do you sit on Garcia versus Ronson?
Yeah, so Jesse Ronson's almost like a Chris Curtis in the sense that he's one of these dudes that fought a really good guys outside of the cage, fought way too many times, racked up a long, lengthy record, and never got his dues. Like, why isn't he not in the UFC? Like, how's this for a run? And I've never seen it since, and I've never seen it before, and I've never seen it since. He makes his debut against Michel Prazeres and loses a split decision. His second UFC fight against Francisco Trinaldo, he loses a split decision. His third UFC fight was against Kevin Lee. He lost a split decision, and he was released from the promotion. He had 3 fights, 3 split decisions. Prazeres, Trinaldo, Lee? What?
It was different.
Whose wife did you hook up with? Why are they mad at you? That's a murderer's row for some dude making his UFC debut. Like, my God. Wins good fights outside the UFC. Again, losses Tiger Sarnovsky, Bellator standout, longtime Russian prospect. Matt McGrath was a longtime Canadian prospect. Matt Dwyer, UFC veteran. Bounces between 55 and 170. It looks like he never realizes his potential. Similar to Chris Curtis, signs a PFL, and they're tough matchups there. He loses to Nathan Schultz, moves up to 170, loses to Nikolai Alexikin. Nathan Schultz won $1 million in the tournament. He was a tournament champion. Nikolai Alexikin up a weight class, one FC veteran, just veteran of the game, strong, good, durable, very well-rounded, extremely shredded and ripped up Russian. Tough spot for Jesse Ronson. So cool to see him make his UFC debut. The fight he has to take on short notice. A fight he, again, has to move up to 170 pounds, up a weight class. He's never won a fight at 170 pounds before in his career. He's like 0-3 at 170. And he knocks out Dalby, takes his back and chokes him. Double performance. You know what I mean? Beautiful work. Beautiful work. And Ronson's always had a really slick striking game. He comes from that long pan kickboxing background, moves his head off the swivel, very technical, very sharp. I mean, you've seen him fight guys like Shane Campbell back in the day in the Canadian regionals, and Shane Campbell's a Muay Thai champion. Shane Campbell's slick as they come, and he just puts a clinic on him. The guy's really tight. He's really technical. Problem is that his career has been largely stalled out due to politics. Same thing as Chris Curtis. So when you can get a big plus money price tag on these guys, they're very well experienced, very well established, and they're good to go. Problem with him is that he was on some like BCAA diet, and I don't know, it caused something to flare up, and he got a positive test. So he's been sitting on the sidelines for the last 2 years, but doesn't have a job, trains all the time, right? Teaches classes, trains. He's chomping at the bit. He wants to get back in there. And he's never gone to Vegas. He's never gone to American Top Team. Never gone to a big gym. He's literally always trained in the confines of London, Ontario. And he's put together some excellent performance. So I don't think it's going to hinder him by any stretch. This is where I think he's a live underdog here against Rafa Garcia. There's a possibility that Rafa Garcia is actually terrible. We just don't know it yet, right? So Rafa Garcia is a tiny little man. He's only 5'7", and he used to fight at 145 pounds. Okay, fights at 145, beats a bunch of Esteban Payans and Eric Gonzalez's and Humberto Bandenais. He's fighting on the Combache South American regional scene, which is at times not the best indication of how good a guy is. And then he fights Nasrat Hakparas. That's the one fight where we give him, stock increase. He takes the fight on relatively short notice. He gives him a performance. His cardio looks good. His output looks good. It looks like this guy could be okay at 155. It's been downhill since then. The Grussmacher fight, he starts off well, and then, oh my God, the wheels fell off. He gassed out so hard. He was the biggest favorite on the card at minus 330, I believe, or one of the biggest favorites on the card at minus 330, and allowed Chris Grussmacher, who's not very good, very limited, to just put a clinic on him with pace and superior striking at 155 pounds. Then he fights Nathan Levy, where he got 7 takedowns, like you mentioned, and then Nathan Levy would just get back up. And for the record, Nathan Levy took him down 5 times. The fight got greasy, the fight got close, and all of a sudden he didn't look all that good to me at 155 pounds. Now this 5'7" former featherweight is jumping up to 170 for the first time. Not going to play in his favor. Should play in Ronson's favor. I think up a weight class, he's not going to be physical enough to just continuously take him down whenever he wants. Strike more often than not. He might have a little more output. He might have a little more drive and a little more aggression. But Ronson should be a little bit sharper and a little more technical. I think Ronson finds the mark, either tries to play Matador the best he can or keep the fight standing when it does get into these clinch positions, and outside of that, back up and chew him apart. So there's 2 Canadians on the card. I already bet against Laramie. Can't do it twice here. Got to go Jesse Ronson slide dog money.
So Rafa Garcia's nickname is Gifted. You're saying that's fake news from the sounds of it?
Well, Jesse Ronson's nickname is the Body Snatcher, and I think he's going to snatch himself some body and put a clinic on this guy. So,
well, thank you.
Is it going to be a greasy decision? Quite possibly, but give me the guy that fights at 170 over the guy that is
knocked out Dalby, who's had
pounds.
who's always had a chin, has always been very, very durable. I mean, it was a dominant. It was a dominant performance. It was a great win.
Yeah.
To be perfectly honest.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, you got me. See, that's why I bring in my Ontario MMA specialist, Cody Saftic, for those exact type of spots. Gonna add Ronson to the card. We got Martin Buday taking on Chris Barnett in an absolute. This fight should be hilarious, as long as it lasts. Buday minus 225. Chris Barnett is plus 185. I mean, I was on Barnett against Jean Vellante. That was good times. Pretty hilarious fight. Vellante came in looking horrible, like he hadn't trained in a year and a half. Like he was looking bad at heavyweight, like, you know, beer gut. Like it was just a bad look all the way around. Chris Barnett, crazy spinning back fist. He's like spinning back kick. That's what I meant. Big time flip celebration after the fact. I mean, he's a 5'9" heavyweight who weighs like 262 pounds. He's a big boy. He's a big boy in all the wrong places. Martin Buday, 6'4". I think if you watch Buday and you watch his Contender Series fight, I mean, I'm not so impressed. Like, I watched him versus Camille Minda from Octagon 25, and I wasn't all that impressed with his stand-up. He does get a nice second-round TKO finish, but like his stand-up looks like a little bit rudimentary. I could see Chris Barnett causing us some problems, but it's that Lorenzo Hood fight where just holding Hood up against the cage. Like I thought Hood was going to tap due to like knee strikes from like all the knees that he was just taking to the quad. I feel like if you go to the end of Vellante versus Barnett, the last like 20 seconds of that round, Vellante actually gets Barnett up against the cage, and Barnett kind of does nothing. Now, maybe that's because it's the end of the round. He's like, let's not waste any energy, that type of thing. But if that type of exact scenario plays out, Buday showed in the Lorenzo Hood fight, then you can just hold him there, control him there, and land, you know, knees and elbows in close in the clinch, and pay off that price tag of minus 225. But it's a crazy heavyweight fight with one guy who throws like spin and stuff all over the place. You would never expect him, if you saw him walking down the street, to be that guy. The under is absolutely jacked. Under 1.5 rounds is minus 175. I don't know. It's crazy. It's a low-level heavyweight fight. I don't think either one of these guys has big long-term potential in the division. I feel like I want to say like dog or pass, but that's just probably because I like the energy that Chris Barnett brings to the cage more than anything. I definitely can see the path where Buday takes him, holds him up against the cage and just unleashes on him, and Barnett's not able to do anything. He's just completely swarmed. But yeah, F it. I'll say dog or pass. Low level heavyweight fight, dog money. What's Barnett by knockout? That could be extra spicy. Barnett by knockout plus 350. We'll see when more options open up this week, because that's not even open at DraftKings Sportsbook yet. We'll see when more options open up. Maybe I can have a little sprinkle on something silly like that, but should be an entertaining one, not one low-level heavyweight fights, variance through to the max. So, let's say dog or pass, but not very much confidence here. What about you?
Yeah, you know what? I'm just a very firm believer that Chris Barnett is a freak show fighter. He's a freak show fighter meant to come in for a quick spectacle and then go on his way. But similar to a Bob Sapp and similar to other freak show fighters, they're not really UFC caliber. They're not meant to be in the UFC. And they go in and deliver an entertaining performance, but longevity and an actual serious run is just never really good to be in the cards. I was shocked he made the UFC to begin with. Here's a guy who's been fighting since 2009, right? 2009. He's been fighting for 13 years. He's fought all across the world, largely in Japan. And they're freak show fights, Paul. Get a load of these records, right? 33 and 38. 15 and 15. 1 and 2, even though he was 12 and 1 at the time. 2-3, even though he's 13-2 at the time. 4-2, 4-3, 4-3, 3-2, 4-5, 5-3. He just fights low-level guys for the most part. And incredibly, because again, I've been watching this guy for a long time, man. Hung Mang Myung, right? It's Road FC 38, 2017. He fights him. He weighs in at 258 pounds, okay? He's 5'9", by the way. He weighs in at 258. He rematches him 4 months later. He tips the scales at 298.3 pounds. He put on 40 pounds in 4 months. And by the way, got TKO'd in the second round again. Like, he's 5'9", can weigh as much as 300 pounds. Alistair Overeem's used him a lot in camp as a sparring partner, and mostly to work on ground game. Because if you can get this guy off of you, chances are you can get a lot of guys off of you. But he's a Taekwondo black belt. He's athletic. He's got the spinning hook kick. He's got these flashy strikes. He could make something happen. But I remember Robin Black and I had a conversation a long time ago, and he said, if being 5'9" and fighting at heavyweight was feasible, there'd be a lot more of them. And he's 100% sure, true on that. How many other 5'9" heavyweights have you ever seen? They just don't really exist. I think Jeff Monson might have been 5'9". He was my boy back in the day, but it doesn't exist for a very, clear-cut reason. Now, he can get away in freak show fights, but when you're fighting actual heavyweight contenders, it's going to be more of a problem. By the way, after those fights in Road FC, he loses to Alex Nicholson. Alex Nicholson weighed 220 when he came into that fight. So Nicholson was giving away 50 pounds to him and knocks him out in 40 seconds. Like, not a good look. He can beat low-end guys, but of course he struggles when he moves up in competition. So fast forward here a little bit to his UFC debut against Ben Rothwell. Well, Rothwell's legitimate enough as a heavyweight that it's easy for Rothwell to just control this guy, out-grapple him, press him up against the cage, and then he hits a 5-finger guillotine choke, right? The go-go choke, his go-to move, which he hadn't hit in a long time.
I nailed that.
But you really do. Yeah, you did nail that one. And Rothwell's not even with the UFC anymore. He's a little bit older. He's a little bit war-torn. And that was his move. And even he can hit that one move on Barnett, because again, there are levels, and Barnett's not at that level.
He was turning his back and running away in that fight too. Like, it was a bad look. It's probably unwise to bet him. I'm a fan. I'm more of a fan.
Yeah, fair enough.
I probably shouldn't bet it. You are bringing up some really good points.
His win before he got to the UFC, he beats this Ahmed Tijanu Shihu, and the guy's 0-0. So he fights low-level guys. He gets smoked out by Ben Rothwell and looks terrible. And I actually bet him against Jean Vellante as well, under the pretense that, well, at least Vellante is not a heavyweight. At least you can finally fight a guy that's a little bit closer to your size. And again, you nailed this one. Jean Vellante shows up fat and out of shape. He already announced his pre-fight he's going to retire no matter the result. And he doesn't look like he takes it seriously. He's got a big old droopy gut on him. And he wins the first round on all 3 judges' scorecards. And then he gets hit with a wheel kick in the face in the second round. And Barnett wins and does a backflip. Or was it a front flip? He did a big front flip onto his ass.
Front flip. Nailed the landing. Nailed the landing.
Yeah,
it's like
right on the ass. Yeah.
It's one of those UFC strike NFTs. It's probably not going to be worth anything in a few years. Because of who we're talking about here. Like, Chris Barnett is not gonna win a champion. Like, if you have a Khamzat Chimaev one, you're sitting pretty right now. But yeah, I mean, it's a really, really funny one because what a performance. Hilarious. Yeah, spinning wheel kick.
Great.
And then the celly is just amazing. I mean, he's a character. He's a fun guy to have. Yeah, it's a freak show fight. But we love freak show fights here. Maybe we don't bet on them.
Absolutely do. And there's my problem, is that Buday actually looks like he might have a little more longevity in the division because he fought an excellent game plan against Lorenzo Hood. Lorenzo Hood's not very good, but have you seen this guy? He's shredded, dude. You don't want to stand in front of this guy. You want to just push him up against the cage, neutralize him, and take his soul. That's what Buday did. Did an excellent job of controlling him up against the cage and just beating on him with these short shots that add up. Now, when you factor that Buday's an actual heavyweight, taking on a 5'9" Chris Barnett, weight aside, he should be able to control Barnett up against the cage and just slowly grind on him. Barnett then is going to get tired, and Buday should have a little bit of a chance. But to your point earlier, Barnett is a much better striker than Buday. Buday is striking not good. He needs to get in the clinch early and often. If he stands at range, not only is he susceptible to get hit by some spinning technique, he's actually just susceptible to getting hit by a straight right hand or an overhand because he's not that good of a striker. But if he fights the right game plan, I think he gets the job done. So I will go Buday. But with Barnett, he's a freak show. He'll bring the entertainment. He'll bring the fight. I guess who knows what could happen, right?
Yep. I do have a bet on this next fight. We've got Trey Ogden taking on Jordan Leavitt. Ogden can be had for -130 at DraftKings Sportsbook. Leavitt is a +110. Watching a little bit of tape on this, I thought it was particularly interesting, the Thomas Gifford fights, because Thomas Gifford came into the UFC completely flamed out, and he just falls into guillotine, like just kind of accepts it. Kind of a bad look. He gets a lot of submission wins in his own rights. Obviously, we know with Leavitt, got great grappling. Everything else seems to be a work in progress for him. I took the under, and it was -115 where I took it. Under 2.5 rounds. I think someone gets subbed here. I can't really quite decide who. If Trey Ogden gets top control, he's got better ground and pound from that position. He's definitely, I think he's a little bit more of a complete fighter. Leavitt has the more flashy and I don't even know the exact, maybe more flashy, more dynamic submission game to his name. I think someone gets finished in this fight. So I bet it at -115. And then because, rest in peace, the Pichel Whisperer, maybe because I lost a bunch of Pichel bets at this one book in particular, they moved it to +105, and I got disrespected. So I doubled down. Took the +105, so I'm in at like -107, under 2.5 rounds. Trey Ogden versus Leavitt. I just watching those Gifford fights, I'm like, if this guy does this against Leavitt, he's gonna put himself in a whole world of trouble. Maybe it turns into a sloppy stand-up affair. Nobody gets taken to the ground whatsoever. Lick my wounds, take my L, and move on. But I think there's a finish here. In terms of a winner, I'll lean towards Ogden because I do think he's a little bit more of a complete fighter at this point in his career. What about you?
Dude, I think this one might go to decision. I think it'd be greasy. I think it could go to decision. I honestly do. Here's my reasoning on this one. So Trey Ogden is a very strange fighter. He's got 11 finishes on his record, 6 rear naked chokes, and 4 guillotines. Mm-hmm. His losses, meanwhile, have come to 1 rear naked choke and 2 guillotines. It seems like he's a Derek Minner type fighter where it's bang or bust with a submission game. Either he's going to catch you early or you're going to catch him. But after losing that last fight to Nick Brown, he goes to Glory MMA and Fitness with James Krause. And I think they've started to put some better game plans together.
We said that about Minner, though.
I know, but this is a winnable fight against Leavitt. I know, but this is what I'm getting
James
at, right?
Krause
so when you look
can't
at
save everybody.
No, that is true. James Krause can't save everybody. And maybe Trey Ogden's not that guy. But from my vantage point, especially when you watch his last fight in particular with Jay Okanovich, his striking looks improved and his wrestling is better than Jordan Leavitt's. So here's the problem with Jordan Leavitt. There's only one thing he can do, which is grapple. He doesn't have the wrestling to get the fight to the ground, and he does not have any modicum of striking in his back pocket. So if he can't take Trey Ogden down, he's going to be forced to strike with him, and he's going to lose that fight. Now, Trey Ogden, I don't think he's ever knocked anybody out. I don't think he has a knockout win on his record. Does he? Anyways, I don't think he's finished anybody by TKO. So I don't think he's going to catch Leavitt, who's actually durable. I think it's going to be grappler versus grappler.
He usually
the difference is going to be
he usually finishes with the submission. But in those fights before this, he is landing like some decent ground and pound. That's the biggest difference I saw between these guys.
His striking to me seems to be better than Jordan Leavitt's. And then Jordan Leavitt's has just had a very weird career because if you tape study him before he gets to the UFC, he doesn't look good. And you would bring that up all the time. Like, these spots, he doesn't look very good. And he took a unanimous decision over Lucas Neufeld. Debatable that he even won that fight. This Izzy William fight doesn't work in that fight.
Really
the
bad.
Levon Lewis fight in LFA, he loses the first round against Levon Lewis, Bavon's younger brother, and then eventually catches him in the second. But that's the thing with him. He's got a bit of a submission game. So he beats Matt Wyman with the slam. But then the Claudio Puelles fight, he starts off well enough. He gets the takedown. He has his, grappling advantage, I guess, in the first. But then he just completely falls apart, man. Oh, my God. He's not physically strong enough to take guys down. So he just ends up flopping. And Claudio Puelles just takes him down, neutralizes him. stuffs any submission attempt, lands a little bit of ground and pound, and then beats him second and third round fairly clean. It's a very bad Jordan Levitt performance. Now Jordan Levitt gets Matt Sales, who's been off for 2 years, right? And doesn't cut weight particularly well. He came down from like 210 pounds to 155 or something. Like, it was a ludicrous weight cut. Hasn't fought in 2 years and is known to have bad cardio and bad grappling. So what happens? Levitt just creates a bunch of stupid scrambles that against the average guy are not going to work. But against Sales, it completely gasses him out to the tune that Sales shoots a takedown of his own and Levitt just snatches him up. Levitt doesn't need long to snatch up a submission. He's got a great guillotine. Got a great anaconda. Very long, very flexible. He could go to mission control. He could snatch up a triangle. He could fish for an arm and an arm. He's good that way. But I think Ogden, out of a camp that's known for good game plans, is just going to sprawl and brawl. He's just going to use his better wrestling, better strength to push this man off of him and then outstrike him. If the fight does hit the ground, bad, but not hot lava. You know how to grapple good enough that you could be able to neutralize them. But I think the reason why it would go decision is Levitt's hard to knock out, hard to submit, and he fights a Ryan Hall type game plan where he's like flopping around most of the time, right? And that just kills time off the clock. So I can see it being Ogden by decision, and that's kind of where my head's at ever so slightly. But again, not a fight that I've got a ton of confidence in.
Well, I hope you're wrong. I hope someone dies.
Fair enough.
For my money.
Proved that. Well,
I don't know. Those Gifford fights, man. That just looked like that looks like just bad decision making, and we'll see how it all shakes out. If I lose, I lose. But watching that happen twice is just like, man, this is
in a minute.
This guy is a liability, and he's taking on a good submission grappler in Levitt. So, and Levitt hasn't really been like cracked by anybody half decent. I don't know if Ogden's half decent. I don't know. I mean, I'm on it. Never
knocked anybody out.
I'm on it, but you make some good points for why I shouldn't be on it. All right, we got Estela Nunez taking on Sam Page. Sam Hughes minus 210 for Estela Nunez. Sam Hughes can be had for plus 175. I think we have a general rule on this show: never Sam Page. So I imagine you're picking Nunez in this fight.
Yeah, Nunez as well. Could it be a greasy women's MMA spot? Potentially, quite potentially. But yeah, I think that there's some better stuff that you can like about Estela Nunez. First and foremost, when she debuted in the UFC, it was a 3-year-long layoff, right? So were you expecting her to look awesome? Were you expecting her cardio to look on point? Like, it's a 3-year-long layoff, and now you're making your UFC debut. Carnelossi is ripped up. She's very physically strong. She's a tough grappling stylist. And I thought that Estela Nunez did job in the first round. In fact, it's interesting to look at the numbers on this fight. So she, in the first round, outstrikes her 31-18, almost doubles her up, wins the first round by my account. Second round, she still outstrikes her, doubles her up 18-9 against Carnelossi. But Carnelossi's hitting these takedowns. That's the problem with Nunez that I can tell so far, is that she gives up just like easy money takedowns, and she'll give up a lot of them. Carnelossi in the third round, again, outstruck 13-9, but again, 2 takedowns. That ends up with sealing up the deal, and then she gets a rear naked choke and she submits her. Nunez gasses into the second round, gasses into the third, gives up easier takedowns, and eventually gets caught in the rear naked choke. But her striking looked good in the first. Her physicality looked good in the pass because of the 3-year-long layoff. Like, there's something there. There's something that could be worked into a decent enough fighter, and this will be good for her, being that coming back from or coming a quicker turnaround, getting back into camp, getting that experience. If her cardio is even good enough to win 2 of the rounds this time before gassing out, I think she'll be okay. Sam Page, meanwhile, I mean, part of me wants to give her a bit of a pass in that she's fought some decent enough competition. Tisha Torres, Loma Luque, Luana Pinheiro. It's how she's losing these fights. I mean, against Tisha Torres, Tisha's never knocked out an opponent ever. She's got 1 submission victory in all of her pro wins, and even in 7-0 amateur career, had no finishes. And yet Tisha mauled her and basically caused her to quit. Her corner was like, yeah, we're cool with you guys stopping this. All right, let's just get out of here. It's a bad look, right? The Loma Luque fight, Loma's a former 105-pound fighter who's giving up size. Sure to God, if you're going to beat her, just lean on her and take her down. No. The smaller Thai fighter, Luque, takes Sam Page down 3 times.
4 times.
Bad luck. 4 times. Bad luck.
Second coming of Habib.
And then against Luana Pinheiro, it's like, well, Pinheiro's actually a good grappler and her wrestling's decent enough. So again, I want to give Sam Page a pass that it wasn't like it was a bad competitor. It was good level talent. It's that there's nowhere that she has an ability to pull the fight in her favor. She just outgunned everywhere. So now she's in a bad spot. She would have signed a 4-fight deal with the UFC. She went 0-3. The division's thin. The UFC's opted to give her that 4th fight on the deal. And if who is, yes, 0-1 in the UFC and Nunes. But I just think I've seen what I've seen. Estela Nunes, better striker, more physical. So how does the fight play out? First round anyways, I think Nunes is going to piece her up. Sam could try to turn the tables and shoot the takedowns, given how easy Carnelossi got them. But has Sam Hughes ever even scored a takedown in the UFC? She was getting taken down by Loma Luke, who, did I mention, is a Thai fighter who was fighting at 105 pounds? So is she going to go out there and take down Estela Nunes? Rinse and repeat. Over the course of 3, maybe not. But she has a cardio advantage. So watch for this one to get greasy down the stretch. Nunes needs to win the first 2 and then gas out, and who cares? Probably doesn't get finished in the 3rd regardless. But I do think that she should be the established favorite. She is. That is who I'm going to be taking. But you get the feeling that it's not exactly just a walk in the park.
All right, we got Alatang Hali taking on Kevin Kroom. -170, Alatang Hali. Kroom can be had for +150. I mean, I went back and watched Gustavo Lopez versus Alatang Hali. It's like, I am convinced. Put my tinfoil hat on right now. Alatang Hali bet the draw in that spot because round 3, I mean, round 1 was pretty close, but like he had busted up Gustavo Lopez's eye pretty good. Obviously a little bit close, but he could have been felt like, I think he lost in terms of the actual numbers, but he the shots that he landed caused damage on Gustavo Lopez. So he's up basically two rounds going into round 3. Gustavo Lopez, good on him, knows that he's probably in this type of situation. He starts going for broke, lands some good strikes, gets him up against the cage. And when they're up against the cage, there's like 5 fence grabs. And Keith Peterson is right over top of him, telling him to stop. He's like, stop that, slapping his hand, stop. And then eventually, I mean, I think I was on Alatang Hali in that spot. Eventually, Keith did what he had to do. It's like, it was so egregious. He has to take a point. And we end up getting a draw when all is said and done, with the 3rd round being a 10-9 for Gustavo Lopez, minus a point, 10-8, 28-28 on the scorecards. Alatang Hali has always seemed pretty durable. I think the key for him here is I think he's going to be able to land takedowns and land them more or less at will. He's obviously giving up some size. Kevin Kroom is quite tall for the bantamweight division, which kind of just helps the wrestling ability of Alatang Hali. He's able to take Ryan Benoit down 4 times. He's able to take Bakary Dana down 3 times. Wrestling should be in his back pocket here. On the feet, I don't think there's any. You have like Brian Kelleher taking down Kroom 6 times last time out. Take him down, stay in the guard, stay out of trouble, don't get subbed. He hasn't been subbed since like 2015, like way back on the regional scene. I think Alatang Hali is the side here. I don't know if I'm going to get to it from a betting perspective, though. What about you?
Yeah. Sometimes it just comes down to what it'd be so easy to explain to a guy, right? So easy to explain to a guy. I'd say Alatang Hali via translator. Remember that first fight with Daniel Bakkerel? Oh, yeah. Remember? I said, remember you shot 7 takedowns and you got 3 of them? Good times. You won that fight. Remember when you fought Ryan Benoit? Yeah. You shot 12 takedowns. You got 4 of them. You won that fight. And you fought Casey Kinney. You shot 0 takedowns. You know, you stood in front of him and got your body kicked to mince meat without at no point attempting one singular takedown. And then remember the Gustavo Lopez fight? You shot one the whole fight. Could have grinded on him. Could have made something happen. You win when you wrestle. You lose when you don't. Because your volume's dog shit. His volume is 36 in the Dana Bakkerel fight, 47 against Benoit, 46 against Casey Kinney, 36 against Gustavo Lopez. You've seen him in 4 fights. He's never eclipsed 50 significant strikes in a fight. The
Mm-hmm.
volume's not there to just win a striking battle. But when you sprinkle in the takedown, that's how you win rounds. Win rounds is a necessity in winning a fight. That's what he needs to do. Getting away from that's the problem. Against Kevin Kroom, here's going to be his biggest issue is that he's 5'5" with a 66-inch reach. Kevin Kroom's 5'11" with a 73-inch reach. So Kevin Kroom's packing a 7-inch reach advantage and a healthy 6-inch height advantage.
Mm-hmm.
He's a much bigger guy, and his volume, even though his striking technique is not very good, he's going to be a longer guy. He could just throw some flim-flam garbage out there and outwork you. Where Haile Alatang will win this fight, sitting down on some big punches, backing him up, getting a hold of him, ripping him to the ground. You even saw Brian Kelleher. Brian Kelleher never fights like that. When he fought Kroom, it was like these takedowns are just too easy. And he would sit and guard. And Kroom actually outstruck Kelleher by the numbers in that fight. But when you're striking off your back, same thing with Vince Pichel. In my heart-to-heart biased opinion, I thought Vince Pichel won the third round against Madsen because Madsen just held, but yet he held him down the whole time
Vince did
nothing. Pichel's landing short shots, short little elbows, throwing up an armbar, throwing up a leg lock, trying to scramble to get up, and Madsen just lying on him, man.
So hard. It's so hard. It's so hard to win off of your back throwing strikes. So.
And that's the main thing here. It's very difficult to win off your back. So Haile Alatang's not getting caught by some triangle from Kroom. And even if Kroom's landing short elbows, short shots, Haile Alatang should be easy money takedowns, good enough top pressure, good enough cardio, good enough pace, good enough durability that he could just win this fight right from guard. It should be easy, but he needs to fight the proper game plan. Shoot the takedowns again, dog. Shoot the takedowns again. If he does that, I think he gets this.
He pissed that fight away against Gustavo Lopez. Like, he had that in the bag. Yeah. He was going to win the decision. And, like, it was so, like, being on that side, I couldn't even be mad. It was just like, Keith did everything he had to do. It's just like, stop that. Stop that. Slapped it. Like, he did it like 5-6 times, like, over the course of like 20 seconds. That's why I think that he bet the draw. You're not going to be able to convince me.
Dude, could be.
He must have bet the draw.
Why else would you do that?
Why else would you do that? Like, you literally, he threw the fight away. You're allowed to lose that third round. It's all good. You went, you took like an obscene number of significant strikes against Casey Kenny. So it's like, we know that the durability is there for you. Even if you get beaten up a little bit in that round 3, it's like he did the one thing. He's like, don't get a point removed from you. Just hold on for dear life in this fight, and you'll win it. I mean, that's probably that poor decision making makes it really tough for me to get to like actually betting him this weekend. But yeah, the path to victory, as we just talked about, is right there. Takedowns, sit and guard, stay busy enough to not get stood up. Rinse, repeat. Boom.
One saving grace that I would say he also has is when he was fighting these bum game plans. He's training out of UFC Performance Institute Shanghai. Doesn't really have a good track record so far in the UFC. For this camp, he's been at Fight Ready in Arizona, which is a grappling heavy gym known for having some of the best guys in the roster who are also, fight good game plans, good coaching staff, Santino DeFranco. I think he's in the right place to just fight the right game plan, dude, and just wrestle him. Camp would have largely been wrestling, guys. Just go out there and do exactly what you've been doing in camp. Should be able to win against Kevin.
And finally, no odds right now on this one. Fight was just announced this afternoon. Munir Lazzez takes on short notice replacement Ange Lusa. Lazzez was supposed to take on my boy, Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos. And Zaleski dos Santos pulls out. Ange Lusa, you may remember him from Contender Series. He took on Jack Della Maddalena. He lost the fight, but he didn't look like a complete scrub out there. And Jack Della is a promising guy on the rise in the division. Munir Lazzez, I haven't exactly had a great read on him. Looked brilliant out there against Abdul Razak Al Hassan, and then gets absolutely starched by Warley Alves in his follow-up fight. We haven't seen him in 14 months now. Without any odds, where do you see this one landing? Do you have a prediction for where the odds should open up on this fight?
Yeah, I would think that because of recency bias and because of the Sanford MMA connection, that would probably be a slight favor towards Angelusa. Again, he's out of one of the more popular camps right now. Guys like Gilbert Burns just fought in last week's card, and Angelusa just fought. He fought like 10 days ago. I just worked the card for Fight Network, XMMA. Yeah, he fought. Okay, it was 14 days. It'll be 14 days when the fight happens, right? As of right now, it's 10 days ago. He fought John Howard for XMMA. And here's the interesting thing here. So he's a Swiss striker, right? Trains out of Switzerland, has some decent enough wins. That's Rustam Kasanov. And then loses a split in LFA, wins a split in LFA, and then takes 2 years off. So he's coming off a 2.5-year long layoff when he fought Jack Della. And apparently, according to the striking or the a lot of the training staff at Sanford MMA, he's a good striker, very versatile, strong, good shape, young guy, getting better. But that's a long layoff to be coming and taking on a guy like Jack Della, who, as it turns out, build goods. I took a flyer on the plus money here on Lusa, I got him at plus 125. Tapology saying he was only plus 105. Regardless, he was slight favorite. That was the one fight on the card that I got wrong. And I knew right then I'm a Jack Della believer. I want some Jack Della. You load up on him in his UFC his UFC debut, and it looks like he's got a promising career. But I'll give Lusa one thing: he's getting just beat up in terms of volume and numbers, but he's not quitting on himself.
No.
Striking looks good. He looks good. But a long layoff and taking on a world-class competitor was just a little bit tough to overcome. So now they book him versus John Howard. Well, John Howard's like a 13-time UFC veteran. He's fought some big, decent names. He's fought in tons of Russian prospects for whatever. The latter part of his career has mostly been fighting Russian prospects and losing, but he's serviceable enough. He'll give you a go. He comes in as like a 6-1 favorite over John Howard. Comes in, strikes a little bit, and then just goes to a wrestling heavy game plan. He just took John Howard down twice. I can't say he looked great. He looked okay, but he relied way more on his wrestling and his grappling than just outstriking Howard, as if he didn't really want tons there. Now, his leg kicks were pretty good. His punches are pretty sharp. And even though he's a striker who fought a wrestling heavy game plan, his cardio checked out. I think this guy's durable. I think his cardio is okay. I think his striking's good. I think his wrestling's okay. He seems to be a generalist. Seems to be average in a bunch of areas. Maybe not a specialist in any one area, but serviceable enough. The problem here with Munir Lazzez, it's the tale of two fighters because it was two different guys that showed up. Mind you, a little bit of medicine both ways. He debuts against Abdul Razak Al Hassan as a plus 265 underdog. No expectations to win. UFC debut, short notice, taking on the former Ultimate Fighter champion, right? Tough Brazil champion. He's got a win over Colby Covington by submission. Warlley Alves is a decent enough guy for a UFC debuting fighter. Munir Lazzez just painted a picture, man. He beat him up. 98 significant strikes landed, 4 takedowns. Cardio is much better. He's big. He's long. He fights an excellent game plan. So now he cashes as a 265 dog. And the very next fight, that's against Al Hassan. The very next fight against Warlley Alves, he's a 250 favorite. But as I mentioned, Alves, not a walkover. He's got the win over Covington. He's got the tough. Alves just came at him hard, hot buyer, way too aggressive. And it worked, He was able to hurt him multiple times. He's able to get him to the ground. And he was able to put him away. So the Munir that showed up against Al Hassan in his debut with the takedowns and the striking, that looked good. The Munir that showed up against Warlley Alves, maybe it was a tough spot, but he did not look good. What are we going to get here now coming off another year-long layoff? I think it's like a 15-month layoff. He's 34 years old. Are we going to get the best version of him? I'm not entirely sure. So I'm leaning towards Angelusa. I think Angelusa will be a little bit cleaner with his striking technique. Might not have the volume. Will land that straight right hand. And I think he'll press the action with the takedowns. Try to grind on Munir a little bit. Maybe try to slow him down. Maybe try to tire him out. And maybe edge him. But probably going to be close. I don't know. Probably going to be a close fight, I think.
All right. So what would you set the line at?
If I had to set the line, I would say Angelusa minus 135.
Wow.
Plus 105 for Munir Lazzez.
There is a line out there in the space, and it was opened at minus 250. It got bet on the Lusa side up to minus 181. And then money is moving it back. So right now it's minus 225. So there was someone who liked Lusa early at the number, and money is filtering back in on Lazzez. Sounds like maybe We'll see where you end up on the PRP at the end of the week, because these things can change.
Yeah.
We obviously have. I didn't even know that he was fighting, so I haven't done proper tape on Ange Luce. I haven't even watched back that Jack Della fight, but it sounds like we're shaping up for a Cody Saftic underdog special.
It could be a dog or pass. You never know.
Could be. All right. So what I am on this week, I've got a 4-leg parlay. AJ McKee, Drakkar, Klose, Pat Sabatini, Pannie, Kianzad. Pays just slightly over plus 200. I'm on the, you spooked me a bit on it, but it's too late to go back now. Under 2.5 rounds in the Trey Ogden versus Jordan Leavitt fight. I feel like just someone's getting subbed. One of these guys is getting subbed as far as I'm concerned. And I'm going to be adding Jesse Ronson. Plus 100 would be pretty good, which is available at DraftKings Sportsbook. As always, Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon, Saturday at some point, I will drop my official final card for whatever I get from weigh-ins. I'm probably going to stay away from weigh-ins a little bit. Weigh-ins cost me money last week. I ended up getting onto Willie Cat Santos because Arce looked so bad, but it's like I didn't know nearly enough about Willie Cat. I still think he's okay moving forward, but kind of got onto that play for that reason. I got onto Aspen Ladd, which the only play I should have done is bet the under if she looked bad on the scales. She looked good on the scales, and then down goes Hezbollah. Which is probably time for us to go. But she looked good on the scales, and then for whatever reason, I added her. So I got myself into trouble, overreacting to the weigh-ins. But I will obviously drop my full card, as always, on Saturday at some point. Hit him with the PRP, Cody.
Hit him with the PRP. Vicente Luque, he's going to be a top ticket guy this week, because you can use him to hedge it after that. We're going to go Caio Borralho. He's our dog number 1. Andre Fialho, dog number 2. Mayra Bueno Silva, Pat Sabatini, Devin Clark, Pannie Kianzad, Drakkar Klose. He's probably your next top ticket guy. Klose Luque. Try to get as close to even money as you can, then add your other pieces. We're going to go with Jeff C. Ronson. He is dog number 3. Yeah, Ronson's dog number 3. We're going to go Buday, Trey Ogden, Estela Nunez, Hailey Alateng, and I'm leaning towards Angelucci for the time being. Again, with Muniz, he looked bad his last fight. He needs to shore that up, come back. 34 years old, bit of a layoff. All stuff that would just cause me to not really want to jump on that side. Luce, meanwhile, just fought like 10 days ago, and it was a 15-minute fight. So, I don't know. Hopefully he took 0 damage, but as fighters would tell you, there's no such thing as 0 damage. You could one-punch the guy in 30 seconds and break your hand. There's always some inherent damage from a prize fight. So, I don't know. What can you do? Anyways, we'd officially got 3 underdogs. Caio Borralho, he's plus 120. It's not great. Jesse Ronson's plus 100. It's not great. Andre Fialho at plus 155. That's decent enough. I think there are good props on here as well. If you wanted to chase a Fialho by knockout, et cetera, et cetera. But ultimately, we need Vicente Luque to win. I would say probably Bueno Silva to win. Pat Sabatini to win. Pannie Kianzad to win, Drakkar Klose to win. I'm going to still take that floater on Jesse Ronson. Martin Buday, maybe a bit on Trey Ogden, Estela Nunez, Hailey Alateng. You could pass on the rest of that stuff. We just want to get our most confident 6, maybe 7, and be happy with that. And unlike last week, where you had to put 3 people on the top ticket, this week only 2. You'll only need 2 because it's only minus 165 on Vicente Luque. So that with Drakkar Klose together on a ticket, it's going to get you fairly good. So I think this could be a good bounce back week. I think it could be a week full of trappy spots. What can you do? But if everyone does what they're capable of, I think we're going to end up on the green on this one.
Couldn't leave my boy stranded there. Had to pick Hezbollah back up for the end of the show. Couldn't leave him in the garden. Anyway, that is it for us this week. Hope you enjoyed the show. For Cody Saftic and producer Pat Mayo, I'm Paul Shaughnessy saying goodbye and good luck.
Oh.